Okay, welcome back to the Outsider Sports Show. Clint Schweitzer and Noah Groniger, and we are being joined by a very special guest, WWF legend Lanny Poffo, joining us right now. Lanny, how's everything going in your world, my man? Everything going good?
I'm 59 years old and still living in the past.
Hey, as are we all, Lanny, and that's the beauty of it all. I'll tell you what, Lanny, such a great career. It's hard to even kind of choose where to start with you because you come from such a legendary family. Of course, your dad, Angelo Poffo, your brother, the Macho Man, Randy Savage. And when you broke in, your dad trained both you and Randy. I kind of wanted to start there. How was that, being trained by your dad and, with your brother as well, and just kind of how was that experience for you?
Well, I feel sorry for people that didn't have my advantages because there's a lot of sharks in the water, and a lot of times the wrestler opens up a wrestling school, takes your money, and gives you nothing. And they're living on your dreams. And I think that's very immoral, and it's dishonest, and I'm very, very sorry that people make a living that way.
Well, absolutely. And you hear a lot of horror stories in the business about, I think I heard somewhere that like Magnum TA had to pay $30,000 just to go get into school, stuff like that. I mean, just ridiculous stories. But you had your father. What was the dynamic like training with him and with Randy? And I mean, did he take it easy on you, or did he shoot on you a little bit there in the ring?
Well, my father was a very pragmatic guy. So what he told us is that he will teach us the basic fundamentals, but the best thing we could do is try to learn from everybody. In other words, watch everybody's match, find out what you like, what you don't like, and never stop learning. And once you stop learning, you might as well quit. So he didn't insist on doing it his way because he knew that the business was changing constantly, evolving. And, of course, Randy took it to the greatest heights of all. In 1975, he was unconditionally released in baseball for the third time. And I saw his first match, and although he was skinny as a rail, the bell rang, and he just drove those people crazy. And I realized he was going to be the greatest wrestler ever.
Wow. I wanted to ask you, too, how you guys came up with your finishers. Macho Man Randy came up with the elbow off the top rope or the axe handle. You had the honor roll and the moonsault. How did you guys come up with those?
Well, everybody thinks I invented the moonsault. I like to, this is a show me state, right?
Oh,
absolutely.
Okay, well, I invented it right after I saw a videotape of Tiger Match against Dynamite Kid. So, and people would come up to me and say, "Do you mind if I do your finish?" I'd say, "Hey, I stole it first."
That's a lot of absolutely. And Dynamite Kid, another great name from the past. But you and Randy, you got into the business in your father's federation in ICW. You broke in that way. You guys feuded. You guys were partners. You find yourselves both in the WWF, now of course WWE in 1985. This coincided with Hulk Hogan winning the world title, the Rock and Wrestling Connection, WrestleMania. Talk about how big that whole situation was when you got to WWF in '85, and just how unbelievable it was to be a part of wrestling taking off to such a global part in pop culture.
Well, I never really believed I would ever wrestle in Madison Square Garden. And I promise you that Randy was 32 and I was 30 when we broke in to the WWF. And I might say that 5 years before that, Randy actually deserved to be a main eventer in the WWF. But, so I'm very, very appreciative to Vince McMahon for, and also George Scott, and also Jimmy Hart, the Mouth of the South, and Howard Finkel, because they were instrumental in bringing us in. And when Randy walked down that aisle in Madison Square Garden, he didn't even have TV exposure. The fans didn't know who he was. But he went out there and blew the roof off the building. And they had to give it to him. They had to give him main event status and the career that he had.
Well, it was such an unbelievable time in wrestling. I mean, I know you would later. We'll talk about this later. I want to ask you about your match with Hulk Hogan a little bit later. But Hulk Hogan wins the title from the Iron Sheik. WrestleMania, Vince McMahon rolls the dice on WrestleMania, the first one, and just with the Rock and Wrestling connection, with bringing in Cyndi Lauper and Liberace and all these people, what was it like being a part of that? Because that was just such a time for. I mean, wrestling has been so territorial before this. With cable television, it became global. And what were you guys thinking about that at the time?
Well, I didn't like it at all when I was on the outside looking in. But once I got on the inside looking out, I really enjoyed it. And even though there was no room for me on top, I just decided I don't care if I have to bring the jacket back to the dressing room. In other words, water will fight its own level. And one of my favorite people from Missouri is Mark Twain.
Yes.
And he had a lot to say about showing up, too. And in other words, if I would have waited for a top break, I would have died of old age. So, anyway, I'm very appreciative. I'm not one of those wrestlers that is malcontented. Fortunately, see, at the time I was married and I had a little girl, and now my daughter is 30 years old, and I am a one-time loser and a born-again bachelor.
Nothing wrong with any of those things. I'll tell you what. I wanted to ask you about Andre the Giant, because you hear a lot of stories about people kind of being afraid to get in the ring with Andre. And I know at one point you were in a battle royal, I think on a Saturday night's main event, where he actually broke your nose with a headbutt to the bridge of your nose, and you were you were bleeding pretty bad. I mean, what was your? I mean, I know you didn't work with Andre that much, but what was your take on Andre and that injury you sustained in that battle royal?
Well, let's put it this way. It was at the Andre the Giant against Hulk Hogan in front of 93,000 people. And they needed, on NBC, they needed to make Andre a villain, a horrible villain. After all, he was one of the most beloved wrestlers of the world since 1970, right?
Yep.
So he took hapless Leaping Lanny, and he headbutted me. And what I suffered was not a broken nose, but a self-inflicted razor blade wound to the head. And Dick Ebersol asked me to do it, Vince McMahon, everybody said, oh, please, go ahead, Dick, please. And everybody loved me, and everybody, and then when I got back to the locker room, nobody was there to see if I coagulated, except for just a few of the wrestlers and, of course, my brother. So that just goes to show you, in the words of the Iron Sheik, you have served your purpose, now get out.
Oh, my, yeah, well, that's another guy for another day, but the Sheik. But obviously that was huge. 1987, Hogan and Andre, the company was just at a peak. But 1989, your character had evolved. I mean, your brother, the late Macho Man Randy Savage, had won the World Wrestling Federation Championship at WrestleMania 4. He was the champion going into WrestleMania 5. But your character had evolved to the point where you became the Genius. You had been a face before that. You turned heel and became kind of this pompous, arrogant, poem reading, kind of character. And how did that character come about, first of all? Because I know you write all your own stuff. Did you have a lot of input when it came to that character?
Okay, yes, I was pompous. Yes, I was arrogant. You forgot to say effeminate.
I wasn't going to go there. I wasn't going to go that far.
That's all right. That's all right. As a matter of fact, I had about a month off. I was letting my hair grow out. I was getting my caps and gowns together, and I was practicing my walk. And my ex-wife, who was, she was watching me practice, and she says, "You're not going to walk like that, are you?" And I said, "I think I might." And she says, "You've got the guts to do that?" And I said, "I don't have the guts not to do that." I said, "Everybody's beating me. I'm not a big guy. I'm just going to be. There's a lot of people predicting that I'm not going to succeed." Terry Funk told me something many years ago. He said, "Lanny, you're a hell of a worker, but if you're going to make it in this business, you got to be peculiar." So I said, since I wasn't born peculiar, maybe there's a way I can act peculiar. So I decided to go for it. Of course, I was always in serious denial. And if you go on geniuslannypoffo.com, that's my website, and you can see my collective amnesia. You can watch me in all my glory against Hulk Hogan And again, on Regis, I was on the Regis Philbin show. Did you ever see that?
Yes, I was just going to ask you about that too. I mean, the character got over. The character absolutely got over. You wrestled Brutus Beefcake Ed Leslie at Royal Rumble '90, which and you know who really put you over in that match? Jesse the Body Ventura put your skills over big time in that match. If you recall that, I don't know if you ever heard the broadcast. He really put you over. Whereas Gorilla Monsoon was going along, the effeminate stuff, and look, he's prancing around. Jesse put you over. I don't know how good of a relationship you had with him, but he really did put you over back then.
Well, let's put it this way. I'm trying to figure out the right thing to tell you about that. Okay? Let's see. First of all, thank you for having me on here. I really enjoyed talking to you guys. And it's always nice to live in the past. But when Brutus the Barber Beefcake cut my hair, and I pretended to be humiliated, then I even wore a wig, and then they pulled the wig off, and I would cover my head up and get what we call a cheap pop from the fans. And I'm not against that, by the way. I just think it is hilarious now that I'm 59 years old, and I have a full head of hair, and Beefcake is going bald. And he's younger than I am, and he's even got tattoos and pierced nipples. I mean, come on. It's like, and then he got married for the 100th time.
Well, he was Hogan's buddy. He was Hogan's buddy. Everyone knows that about Ed.
Well, I love Hogan for what he did for me. But, all these people that used to criticize my brother for being overprotective of Elizabeth, I love Hogan and I appreciate what he did. But I just saw a YouTube where he actually criticized my brother's marital status. And I thought, well, that guy had a public divorce and then turned around and married again, a girl 20 years his senior. So, I can't abide by that.
Well, you do own a victory over Hulk Hogan, a count-out victory on Saturday night's main event in November 1989, which actually took place about 2 hours from where our studio here is in Kansas City. It happened in Topeka, Kansas. Just talk about that and how that came about, because Hogan was kind of feuding with Mr. Perfect a little bit, and you were associated with Curt Henning at the time. You defeated Hogan. How big was that for you personally?
Well, it's just all the chickens came home to roost. I resented losing matches to no-talent bums like Bam Bam Bigelow. So it all evened out when I wrestled Hulk Hogan and beat him. I probably didn't deserve either finish. I didn't deserve to beat Hogan, and I didn't deserve to lose to Bam Bam.
Right. You worked with Curt Henning around this time, Mr. Perfect, and of course, no longer with us. Another sad story with Curt. I don't know. You tag teamed with Curt a few times. You managed Curt. You were, I think, his executive. I can't remember what they call his executive council or something like that. But what was your? Yes, exactly.
I was his arena rep.
Right. Oh gosh. Well, that's another. Hope not. I hope not in the way that we know of that term. But Lanny, you what was Curt like? Well, was he a good guy to work with? Obviously, he was amazing in the ring.
Well, here's the thing on Curt. I love Curt. He's a very nice person. I'm very sorry that he's gone. But I feel I have a bigger obligation to speak to the fans. Like, for example, we just lost Seymour Hoffman, the actor from Drugs.
Yes.
I can't think of his name. What was it? He had three names.
Philip Seymour Hoffman, yeah.
Okay. And not that I'm not a fan, I just don't know everything. If you got three names, it's hard to remember all of them.
A lot.
Okay. And it's like people stop doing drugs for about 10 minutes, and then they start again. They once we lose a person, why do we lose the lesson? Now, Curt Henning was a fantastic person. Everybody loved him. But he died of an acute cocaine overdose that toxicology reports do not lie.
Yep.
And the reason I'm ratting him out is because I want fans to know that you don't have to go down that road. Now, my brother died about 3 years ago, May 20th, and his toxicology reports said ventricular fibrillation, heart attack. And this happens to people around their 60th birthday, and Randy was 58 and a half. There were no drugs in his body. Randy had an honorable death. And Curt Henning didn't. And, I realize that there's a straight and narrow road, and there's another road. And that's why I wrote a book about smoking. It limericks from the heart and lungs. And, here's what happened. I had written 2 books, and both are on Amazon.com bestseller list for the Kindle edition. Now, both times I was turned down by Random House, and I was turned down by even the WWF. And in the words of Eric Cartman, I would like to say, nya, 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 nya.
I'm so glad we got a Cartman reference in. That is amazing.
I was wondering, I mean, we know Curt Henning passed, and he didn't go the way we wanted him to go, the way he would have wanted to go. But I wanted to know how hard that hit you and Randy when you got the news that Curt Henning had passed away.
Well, I'll tell you what, Randy asked me to write a song about him, and he put it on his album, Be
My
a Man.
Perfect Friend.
Yeah, I wrote The Perfect Friend. And because he asked, is there any way you can do this? I know you're not a rap guy, but, So I said, yeah, I'll do my best. I mean, if you don't like it, don't use it.
Yeah,
So,
we were going to actually ask if you had written that song, because there was a lot of connections there, and I was like, well, Lanny probably wrote that, so that's glad you brought that up. And and you mentioned that it has almost been now it's almost 2 months away from the 3-year anniversary of Randy's untimely death, and I know you've asked about it in every interview. You've talked about it. Just kind of go back to May of 2011 and just kind of how that process was for you. You hear the news, just and I mean, I'm sure you got a lot of condolences. People still to this day, emailing and sending cards and flowers. Just what was that whole experience like for you? Just such a tragedy for Randy.
well, the night before, I was at his house, and he had a beautiful house in Seminole, Florida, and we were talking about everything. We were just, it was almost as if he knew he was going to die. And the last thing he told me was, Lanny, I don't know how you did it, but you survived this business and I didn't. I said, well, you survived the business. And he said, no, I didn't. Everything hurts. I'm in agony every day. So I said, gee, I'm sorry. He says, if anything happens to me, I know you're going to take care of Mom, because you always have and you always will. Because, my father died the year before.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, so I got up in the morning, and I flew to Dallas, Texas, and I'm about to fly to San Jose, California, and I turn on my cell phone, and there's a machine, an answering machine from Largo Medical saying that your brother was in a car wreck, and he's in critical condition, and his wife is banged up, but she's okay. I knew the way they said that he was gone, because I know that they wouldn't say on a machine.
Right.
That's not the way they do that. But I could tell by the way they said it. So I called up the hospital, they put me on with Lynn, and I learned, the horrible news. And then I had a little trouble finding a plane back to Tampa because it was all sold out. And they said, I'm sorry, it's sold out. And I said, you don't understand, my brother died. And she says, I'm sorry, but there are no tickets available. So I said, can I see your manager? And she said, okay. And I talked to the manager, and I said, look, I am the brother of Macho Man Randy Savage. Do you know him? He says, yes. And I said, he died this morning, and my mother is, pathetic, and I need to come home. And he said, don't worry, you're on the next flight. And they made it happen. So that just goes to show you, if your brother's a Macho Man, you can get anything.
Well, it sent shockwaves through the wrestling world, and I'll tell you why it sent shockwaves, because we talked about how Curt Henning died. We could talk for the next 3 hours about wrestlers and drug addiction and substance abuse and death. Your brother Randy, with the heart situation and as he's driving, that sent shockwaves, because this is not a typical wrestler death. This was a guy who had obviously moved on in his life, who was happy, who was, I believe, remarried to a beautiful woman, and here he was, just trying to, ride out the rest of his life, and this happened. And I tell you what, that's why I think it sent so many shockwaves through the wrestling world. We're used to death, Lanny. Unfortunately, we're used to death. this was not what we're used to, and this was a great guy and an intense performer, one of the greatest of all time.
I would say that his match with Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, if you don't think that's the greatest match you've ever seen, then get another DVD and compare them, but at least let the argument happen.
Yeah. Right, Pontiac, Silverdome, yeah.
And I have to say one more thing, that Randy's last words were, I think I'm going to pass out. And then he passed out, and it was his beautiful wife, Lynn, that grabbed the wheel and steered it into a tree because his foot was still on the accelerator. And they were on the wrong side of the road. They were about to hit a motorcycle, and behind that was a bus. So, you know, she saved the lives of how many people I don't know. But it was just like baseball. You cannot think, you got to react. And she's a hero, and I'm very, very happy that he was not alone in the car.
Yeah, thank goodness for that, and thank goodness no one else was hurt in that situation. It's still, you know, it's hard to believe it's been 3 years, and I mean, your family, such a legendary family. Your dad, I know you'd lost your dad the year before. I see pictures of you. I saw a really cool picture whenever we were doing some prep for this interview, Lanny, of you and Randy with your beautiful mother. And I think there was something about that picture. I think you were both kissing her on a cheek, and there was something about that just really kind of reminded me of what a great family that you guys have, the Poffos. I mean, just top notch.
Well, that was 1 year and 10 days from his death, and that was Randy asked me to write a poem for his wedding. He says, "But don't make it long and boring, because you can be long and boring." And I said, well, you know, he was the alpha male. What do you think? So anyway, I mean, if I were sensitive about anything, I would have been hanging myself in my room years ago.
Well,
so,
yeah.
Anyway, I said, we are back on the beach where they met long ago in honor of Randy and Lynn, a beautiful couple that loved and lost, but now they've decided to win. Nice tin was my brother's smooth opening line. What was Lynn's thoughtful reply? Surviving the time and the distance between is the knot they've come back here to tie. So here's to the union of Randy and Lynn, a couple that I greatly admire. May the years bring you health, satisfaction, and happiness, more than you'll ever require. And then 1 year and 10 days later, you know, the tragedy happens. But I'm glad that my father died first because, you know, and I'm actually sorry my mother lived to see it because she collapsed.
Yeah.
And so I did my best. I sold my house. I moved in with her. She's 87. I'm doing my best for her. After all, she took care of us. It's my turn.
Wow, and I'll tell you what, that poem you wrote was not long or boring, Lanny. So you that was unbelievable. And I know, and you talked about some of your books. One of your books on Amazon currently is a book of limericks, you know, like that. And a lot of people don't realize that you have written these books, and you're an Amazon bestseller as far on the Kindle. And you know, that's kind of what you're up to. I mean, do you have any more plans for any more work, you know, to that extent?
Well, I've already turned down a lot of offers to write Randy's biography because I just didn't feel it was right to take that kind of money, you know, just to sell them out like that. So, and especially while my mother's alive, because if I ever did it, I'd want to do it right.
Right.
And if you want to do it right, it's got to be once and all. Because I hate these tell-all books that just tell some.
Sure.
But anyway, I'm sorry, go on.
Oh no, I was just going to say, ask if you had any other books coming up, anything that we could be looking for, anything that you're up to that we could direct our fans to. Obviously, the genius LannyPoffo.com is the website. Is there anything else we can throw out there for you as far as anything that you've got coming up?
I just thank all the fans for constantly using my PayPal on my website, and also go ahead on Amazon.com and look up my books. And they're both on the bestseller list, and I just feel so proud of that. Especially it took me so, like, screw you guys, I'm going home. That comment.
Yep.
So I was just thinking, okay, what am I up to lately? I have lost 60 pounds. I'm on greens, onions, mushrooms, beans, berries, and seeds. I'm a vegan. I'm very, very proud of that. And I'm going to try to live to be 150 or die trying. Randy achieved immortality through his work. I'm going to achieve it through not dying.
Here's to that, Lanny. If only, my goodness, I love it. Oh, I love it. Now, and of course, before we let you go, I mean, you still do independent. A lot of people don't realize you're still out there doing independence. In fact, I've seen you running around with Wayne Ferris, Honky Tonk. You know, what's it like doing the independents now that you're kind of later on in your career and working with a guy like Honky Tonk Man who is such a polarizing figure?
If the price is right, I'll be there tonight.
Even for Wayne Ferris, my gosh, I can't even imagine that. That guy's a trip, man. I mean, got any good Wayne Ferris stories?
Here's my invitation. Here's my invitation to Wayne Ferris. He says, "I am an entertainer. I wear my jumpsuit. I bring my guitar. I sing my song. You pay me my blanket money, and I go the blank home."
Yes, that sounds exactly. Sounds exactly what I would have figured for Mr. Ferris. Lanny, I tell you what, we've already kept you too long. I know you took time out of your schedule today to talk to us. We can't thank you enough. Here's to making it to that 150 years old. Cannot thank you enough for joining us. Such a pleasure to have you, Lanny. We really look forward to it, and we'll definitely keep in touch through social media, man, if that's okay with you.
Okay, in the words of the Iron Sheik, you stupid jabronis, it's been your pleasure.
Just don't make us humble, Lanny. Don't make us humble.
Okay, don't put the camel clutch.
No camel clutch, no. Exactly. Hey, Lanny, thank you so much. You have a great rest of the day. We will catch up soon, okay?
Hey, thanks for such a great interview, guys. You guys are terrific.
Anytime. Thanks a lot.